The first paper is going to be by Lenora Green-Turner. She's a native of Macon, Georgia. She's a DMA student at the School of Music here. She recently completed her tenure as artist in residence for the Lemoyne Owen College, Stax Music Academy, and Opera Memphis. Her roles include Countess Susanna from Il Segreto di Susanna, Donna Anna from Don Giovanni, Sister Angelica from Suor Angelica, and Antonia from Les Contes d'Hoffmann. Excuse my terrible French. She has been awarded the Jane Wilson Emerging Artist Award and the Leo Rogers Scholarship Sarasota Opera Guild Award. She's a student of Louise Toppin. She has a master's degree from UM and a performance diploma from Indiana University. And this weekend she is singing the role of Strawberry Woman and Lily and a few other small bits in the performance of Porgy and Bess. Here we go. Thank you, Lenora.
Thank you. The purpose of this project is to recognize that the Gullah culture is present, whether it be the fictional opera or real life. Although there are racist connotations and the ignorance of not knowing what the culture is, there is a negative perspective on the language, generalizing it to be Ebonics instead of the actual Creole language born out of the oppression of slavery. The language and the Gullah culture should be celebrated and not used as an afterthought. Although George Gershwin experienced these aspects in the summer of 1934 on Folly Island, just outside of Charleston County, he didn't quite grasp the full concept of the language's melodic and rhythmic attributes. I feel that the Gullah language can and should be represented better, rather than showing that the characters are unlearned and inferior to the American way. If we can perform and play more to the archetypes rather than the stereotypes, it is good to dig deeper and find out what it means, what the actual traditions are, and to find purpose for each character. As DuBose Hayward really wanted the language to sound authentic, the Gullah language has gotten lost in the process. As we know more, we should do more to make sure that we better represent the culture and the language to the best of our abilities. If I ain't know where you going, I ain't know where you been. And I said that the reverse way, right? If I ain't know where you been, I ain't know where you going. Which means if you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going. To put a timeline into perspective, the Gullah culture came to existence in the 1700s during the slave trade. I'll go back. There were slave ships traveling back and forth from the coast of West Africa and the southeastern coast of America. And this project is very personal to me because it is my heritage. Just south of Charleston, my family is from St. Helena Island. Many of the slaves were taken and exploited for their knowledge of growing certain crops, such as rice, yams, benet, okra, gourds, and sugarcane. Despite this misfortune, there blossomed a beautiful culture that encompasses art, storytelling, food and farming, spirituality, and beliefs. The Gullah language is the only English-based Creole language in the world derived from African languages, Native American languages, and European languages. Now, new broom sweep clean, but old broom get the corners. This is a small part of my family tree comprised of my grandmother's side of the family. Its importance is to show you the Americanization of the Gullah culture. When the slaves were freed, they were left on the islands, but with poverty and illiteracy. Missionaries culminated this state of affairs and created small or skill-based vocational schools that domesticated the Gullah people and helped them be self-sufficient. Therein, my great-grandmother Ernestine was chosen to take part of this quote-unquote privilege. And with the help of her, financial help of her brothers, she went to boarding school and to make a life for her family as a domestic technician, quote-unquote, mammy, helping doctors and their families. But with this information, I was able to make Serena an archetype from my great-grandmother, Ernestine. One of the schools that should be recognized is Penn School. It is a Quaker establishment founded in 1862, deemed National Recreation Era Monument by former President Barack Obama on January 12, 2017. As education was the focus, the language began to be recognized as Ebonics and slang due to various common attributes of African languages, namely the Igbo language spoken in Nigeria. Now, STR is substituted for SKR, as in screet or strawberry. D's are the substitution for THs. Also, Western languages and dialects were all fused within, and you have certain African words and expressions that come out of this language, like kuda for turtle, tote for carry, yeti, can you yeti me? Or yent, yentru? A lot of these are mistaken for bad English and broken English. The language also has many idiomatic phrases, and that can also be confusing. We fail to realize that the Creole language was also a mix of French, Spanish, Irish, and Scottish dialect, depending on what plantation the slaves were on. So if you can see, some noticeable changes would be speed of what you might hear, say, in the Spanish languages. Also, nasal tones for the French dialect, and longer drawls for English or British dialect. Now, una is the word you in Igbo. So you see the differences in the rural areas. It was ona. In the Scottish dialect, hana, or in Savannah, which they call the cityfied folk, yana. Virginia Mixon Garrity realized the disconnect in the inner city schools of Charleston, South Carolina, as students of Gullah descent were failing tests due to the lack of communication and understanding. She was an advocate for helping teachers learn the language to better serve the island communities. She loved the Gullah culture and adapted it as her own. She wrote books and spoke the language herself. I was surprised to learn that she had produced the Gullah version of DuBose and Dorothy Hayward's play, Porgy, rewriting it in the actual Gullah language. And this is where the real digging commenced, actually. So some notable Gullah experts are journalists and scriptor of African fables, Joel Chandler Harris, and he's known for one of the most famous Gullah stories that we know, Brer Rabbit and Brer Fox, from Disney's Song of the South. And you may remember Uncle Remus singing zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Virginia Mixon Garrity formed her Gullah writings after Ambrose Gonzalez, another journalist but of Cuban descent, and raised also in South Carolina as well. He is also known for his scripted collection of Gullah fables called The Black Border. Dr. Lorenzo Dow Turner actually took on the task to venture to Africa and do research on the Gullah language and culture. His contributions are stated in his article, Africanisms in the Gullah Dialect, and is displayed in rare audio recordings of Gullah language, African lullabies, prayers, and various conversations. Now, I'd like to call your attention to this next slide and notice the apostrophes. We find that Ambrose wrote his in a phonetic spelling, meaning what he heard. And the use of apostrophes are for broken English rather than, let's just say for broken English first. And then DuBose Hayward, he took on a better proper English setting, but also used the apostrophes for broken English. These apostrophes made it really difficult for me to actually get through the play and the novel. The next one is Virginia Garrity. She used a phonetic spelling, but she also she used apostrophes only for elisions rather than the broken English, and this made it so much easier for me to read. And if you can take notice that she used the bigger words like tagonize. DuBose Hayward used picking on them, but the Gullah people were very, very smart in using lots of the English words that they heard and they understood, and using those big words. And the Gullah sentence structure is also something to be noted. Now, this is my cousin. She was born on the island, and I'd like her to introduce herself.
Greetings. My name is Kendra Bennett. I'm an entrepreneur reared on St. Helena's Island, South Carolina. I feel like the Gullah language would be well preserved could be well preserved by allowing our children and our children's children to continue to use the language without making them feel as though they're inferior to everyone else who does not speak the language.
And now, this is very special to the language. The New Testament of the Bible was translated just in, many years, but approved by the American Bible Society in 2005. So now you have an actual written example of what the Gullah should look like. And it was actually translated from the Greek the Greek manuscripts of the Bible rather than hearsay. And I will have her read some of this in Gullah.
The good news about Jesus Christ will mark right. This share the good news about Jesus Christ, God's Son. The good news state like how God, prophet Isaiah done right way say. God say, it going to send we a messenger head of Jah for open up the way for you. Somebody to holler in the wilderness say, must clear the road where the Lord wine come through. Make the pathway straight for walk.
And here, this is an excerpt from the actual opera. At the very beginning of the opera, where Serena tells her husband, Robbins, not to go play crap in the crap game.
Honey, look here, don't play the night, Jah. You hear what I say? You better do what I say do. If you ain't been a drink, you ain't been a talk to me like that. You ain't never had the Lord Jesus crack your teeth for saying nothing about God to go play. That gal Bess ain't even much fit for God fan woman to associate with. Ain't even much fit for no God fan woman to associate with.
With a little bit of attitude at the end. Okay, and this is the work. If you can see, my suggestions seem like, in my opinion, should be written in a different way, where the quarter note should be first and the eighth note after, on like, mainly because elongated vowels seem like a, okay? But we can't change that because Gershwin did not write it. And I decided to IPA them. IPA is abbreviation for the International Phonetic Alphabet, and which uses symbols to depict sounds that you speak. If you see, the first line is the actual line spoken in Gullah. This is my version of the Gullah. The second line has the IPA, and then the last line is a bit of a translation. Seem like these bones don't give me nothing but box kia tonight. So box kia rather than box car, using a yacht. Or you can see the glottal stop in nothing, okay? And here are some more examples. If you can see, the Gullah language doesn't have plurals. It's mainly singular. And also, they have no gender. So her and he become eh. Here's another example. What you say to these, Jake? Them the same cockeyed bone that clean out the game last Saturday. If they roll in this game, I roll out. That's how he would say it, I think. Now, and mouth not know no Sunday, which means I talk too much. Thank you for Yeti.
Thank you, Lenora. That is really, really fascinating. We have time for a few questions. Mark Clegg has the microphone for those who might want to ask something. Wayne Shirley.
thank you immensely for that paper. The ghost of people saying that this is all Gullah haunts all talk about Porgy and Bess, and having seen that Dubose Hayward didn't really, as you said at the beginning, rinse it all out by the time he'd written, is very helpful to me. I'd wondered whether this wasn't simply a mistake, and I now know it wasn't. Thank you.
High praise from our editor. Other questions? Sir? Meredith.
Hi, thank you so much for that. That was absolutely fascinating. And also the way that you incorporated your family history and had your family speaking to us. It was just such a treat. I actually just have a very simple question. Just about, is there a difference between the terms Geechee and Gullah? And I asked just because my best friend growing up, her mother was, she spoke about her mother or her grandmother speaking Geechee. And it was just always something, you know, we grew up together, so I'd hear about this all the time. So I'm just wondering if it's like a regional thing or if it's, their terms are used interchangeably.
I do think it's a regional thing for me in St. Helena Island. Sorry. I do think it's a regional thing for me in St. Helena Island. Everyone says Gullah. In other places, they call it Geechee. And it may be, I think it's because of the dialect term.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, that was terrific. I really enjoyed it, and am interested to know more about this from hearing you speak. I'm wondering if the book is available by Virginia Mixon Garrity, if it's something you can find to be able to read it.
It is, and it's very inexpensive. All I had to do was get on Amazon and find it. Got it from abebooks.com.
Oh, okay.
And I think it was only $7.
Great, thank you very much.
ABE Books.
Thank you.
AB.
This is not really so much in response to your talk, but because there was no really time for questions after the previous panel, I do want to comment and say that I believe very strongly that Porgy and Bess is not racist. And I think that, I mean, like all important art, it is universal. And it's not, in my opinion, fundamentally about black people. It is about the human condition. And it is very much an American opera. And I think its greatness is precisely, it says something about the human condition, the struggles of ordinary working people, the nobility of spirit, and I think that, in fact, it is a very progressive and democratic opera. And I just want to say that this whole approach of judging art on the basis of race or gender, in my opinion, is very wrong-headed and dangerous. Its historical pedigree, whether one likes it or not, can be traced back to things like Aryan art and its opposite, degenerate art. And I think that it has very, very damaging cultural, artistic, and political implications. And I think it certainly does not apply to Porgy and Bess. If I can just really quickly, this is what the composer and critic Virgil Thompson said about Porgy and Bess when it debuted. And I think that there is an echo of that here, whether it's intentional or not. He said, "The material is straight from the melting pot, at best a piquant but highly unsavory stirring up together of Israel, Africa, and the Gaelic Isles. Gershwin's lack of understanding of all the major problems of form, of continuity, and of serious or direct musical expression is not surprising in view of the impurity of his musical sources. I do not like fake folklore, nor fidgety accompaniments, nor bittersweet harmony, nor six-part choruses, nor gefilte fish orchestration."
Yes, sir.
No, I was just going to say Virgil Thompson said that because he was jealous and he knew he'd never write anything that good.
I want to thank Lenora for this amazing paper and a perspective that we might not have been able to have otherwise. We're going to move on now to a paper. Yes, let's thank her again. Thank